Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Thursday, April 24th, 2025, and today we are going to be talking about Donald Trump's website. Yes, the Trump organization now selling Trump 2028 hats and shirts and koozies, which, as much as it seems like it is, in a way, laughable that there is this insinuation that Donald Trump, in some capacity or any capacity, is eligible for a third term, it seems to be something that this administration seems to be openly toying with the idea that Donald Trump might be indeed running for a third term. If you want to find it yourself, I guarantee you this is not something that I'm just trying to spring on you because I think that it's funny or anything of that sort. You can find that on TrumpStore.com, the Trump organization, very closely associated with Donald Trump. I mean, this literally is his organization. They're selling Trump 2028 hats, Trump 2028 shirts, and you're seeing it all across because there very much seems to be this intentional push from the Trump administration to openly flirt with this idea that Donald Trump might run again. And now I'm going to start off by saying that odds are I don't think Donald Trump will be on the ballot come November 2028. I still think that even if Donald Trump tries to defy the Constitution and he tries to put up the same type of, wall against the Supreme Court that he has done in the past where he says, and J.D. Vance says, or someone of the administration says, try to enforce your executive order, right? Think about that for a moment. There are plenty of states with Democratic secretaries of states who just simply won't put Donald Trump's name on the ballot, even potentially some Republican secretaries of state who just say this is a blatant violation of the Constitution, and you're going to find that it's going to be an increasingly, big uphill battle for any circumstance for Donald Trump to try to quote-unquote rewrite the rules, as he might suggest in these t-shirts and in this campaigning. But it is quite interesting. I think that Donald Trump and his administration largely is focused on election after election after election. They haven't even forgotten the 2020 election, which they rightfully lost to then Vice President Joe Biden. And it's so really interesting to see how this administration really tries to build up this narrative that Donald Trump can run. I mean, when they talked about it in the beginning, Donald Trump said that there are methods to run for a third term. When they asked him, are you joking? Is this all in jest? As many of the people have said, he says, it's not in jest. It's not a joke. I'm not joking, right? I'm very much considering the idea that I might run. And so now seeing that the Trump administration and the Trump organization is fundraising and selling shirts that directly say in near explicit terms that Donald Trump wants to run for a third term and might be running for a third term, it really throws a lot of our understanding of the current political climate for a loop. Now, I think Donald Trump, too, being in this second term, very much knows that it's not going to happen, that he's not going to be able to run for a third term. But I think what worries him is the fact that in many ways he's seen as this lame duck president. Obviously, he just got reelected in the same way that many presidents do get reelected, but there's been about 4 years between the two terms. And the level of strength that Donald Trump is really trying to exude on the behalf of the Republican Party is only getting his political party more and more in trouble. As much as the Trump administration and the GOP do believe they are making substantive process and progress with things like DOGE and budget cuts and mass firings and reshaping the federal government, absolutely, those are things that will have a lasting impact. But in terms of how they're persuading the American public, it's not like the 2024 election, where Donald Trump arguably, in a pretty strong return to the White House, was able to reshape the way that the American public viewed him. He left this election with the highest approval rating he has seen in his lifetime, nationally speaking. He left this election with the most votes he had seen out of the 3 that he had been the Republican nominee for president. He marks the record for the most voted for Republican by raw vote number in United States history. And so Donald Trump, in a way, back in November, was riding high. The approval rating was only down 1% in terms of favorability. He started off in the White House with a positive 12 delta, right? 12-point difference between those who approved and disapproved of the job that he was doing. And now today, they're both in the negative. And even Fox News says that Donald Trump is underwater enough so that in comparison, it's lower than Biden's. It's lower than Obama's. In fact, what really is interesting is that it is lower than his first term. Lower than at this point in time when Donald Trump was in his first term, April 24th, 2017. This is an 11-point difference. And this is Fox News. a high-quality pollster from a conservative-leaning network, Donald Trump immediately took to Truth Social and slammed Rupert Murdoch and the Fox News polling industry, saying they're fake news, they're wrong, this isn't correct, but it is very much in line with a lot of the data points we have been seeing nationally. And so I think this, to tie it back into why I think Donald Trump toys with this idea, is because I think when he's in campaign mode, he starts to see that his policies become more popular. When he goes from state to state and sells himself on a candidacy standpoint, and granted, the circumstances of his 2024 election were unlike anybody has seen in modern American history, but it is that time at which he saw himself popular. So I think there is this really big urge to return to the day and age of candidate Trump rather than President Trump. And now I think, too, this push for Trump 2028 also is quite interesting, just at baseline, that they would even try to float this so early on, right? Very clearly, there would be immediate legal battles and arguably repercussions for the White House because they would have to use resources and taxpayer dollars and a limited legal counsel that very much might be caught up in the courts across the country, might be caught up in the courts on the national level, not only statewide, but now also, too, on this very big non-issue where the Constitution could not be more explicit that a president cannot run for a third term. And I think a lot of Democrats, too, might be looking at this and saying, Donald Trump running for a third term doesn't really mean much. He probably wouldn't win a third term. And while I am inclined to believe that with the right Democrat, yes, you can defeat Donald Trump, because even back in the day and age of 2020, Biden did defeat Donald Trump, even if he was likely going to lose the 2024 election, thus prompting the dropout in July of 2024. Looking at that, in 2020, Joe Biden did defeat Donald Trump. So it certainly is possible. He's not this unbeatable, unwinnable type of candidate that Democrats are supposedly up against time and time again. But I do caution them in saying that if Donald Trump is able to run for a third term again in this estranged reality in which we see some weird or altered version of the Constitution allowing this to happen, if that does in fact happen, Donald Trump running for a third term very well could win. Doesn't mean he's most likely to, and it doesn't mean he's most likely to lose either. I have not spent enough time thinking about the political analysis of, Trump versus Josh Shapiro, Gretchen Whitmer, Wes Moore, whoever it might be, right? Kamala Harris again, whoever, right? Because that's not what this has been focused on. We've talked about J.D. Vance. We've talked about all these other candidates as potential hypotheticals. Donald Trump Jr. even, I think I've given more thought, arguably, to the odds of a Trump third term. But I say all of this to note that this push, I think, one, is a huge surge on the White House side to sort of put this distraction in front of many people. I think they've realized that a lot of the press they've been receiving in coverage of El Salvador, in coverage of tariffs, right, in coverage of the way that this administration has been dealing with the Pete Hegseth fallouts, signal chat after signal chat. I mean, quite literally, it's crazy to think about that this isn't some episode of The West Wing, right, or Veep even, better put, right, that this is reality, that this is present-day America. And so I think when they do things like this, it causes people to start covering it. And even videos like these, I'm in full acknowledgement that this is something that, the Trump administration looking at this wants to acknowledge. They want the media to pick it up. And that isn't to say that it shouldn't be picked up, right? In its own right. A president who is a two-term president trying to seek a third term is always newsworthy. But I don't think there's any merit, and I don't think it's going to happen. I seriously do understand that this administration doesn't treat the rules and the regulations that have been imposed upon them by district courts, federal courts, Supreme Courts, by lawmakers, members of their own cabinet who have called them out in the past. I mean, this is unlike anything, I think, we've seen in American government. And I don't think it's anything like the first term. I do think there are some fundamental differences. And I think we're going to see them play out over the coming years. But I don't think that they are going to win this legal battle. I don't think they are going to get Donald Trump on the ballot in 2028, and I certainly don't think that it's going to be enough that even puts him within a viability of winning that election. I think 2028 is going to be ran and won by candidates not named Donald Trump, or arguably even to Donald Trump Jr. I just don't think that's going to pan out either. like I said, I think this is largely a distraction, but I also think, too, it speaks to the level of unwillingness to bend, or not bend, but obey a constitution that is clear. And I do think that's something, regardless of where you are on the political aisle, no president who has served 2 terms should be seeking election to a 3rd. No president who has signed by the oath of the Constitution and the office of President of the United States should be seeking a 3rd term. Under no circumstance should Donald Trump be actively toying with this idea, and yet he is. And while I do understand that this is really just trying to really digest it, right? I think that we can talk about the electoral implications as this continues to go on. But Donald Trump won the last election fairly. He lost the election prior fairly. He won the election prior fairly. If he runs in 2028, categorically, it's a not fair election, right? It is an unfair election. And while I do think that a lot of this, again, is just posturing, I think a lot of it is a distraction, I do think that there are serious repercussions when the office of President of the United States makes decisions, announces things like this, toys with ideas that are fundamental to our Constitution, fundamental to the American electoral process. And so I do think, in a way, that matters. And so I'd be interested to see how voters respond to this hypothetical Trump 3rd term. I think this is the most you're going to see a lot of news activity. Obviously, when Trump was toying with it, MSNBC, Fox News, CNN, legacy media, new media, all of them picked it up. They're going to continue to do so the longer that this White House continues to put out information that all but suggests that Donald Trump is going to be running for a 3rd term. So keep your eye out for news around this. Keep your eye out for the way this is under conversation and in conversation with reporters, with politicians, with whoever it might be. But chances are Donald Trump's not going to be running for a 3rd term, and chances are he won't be president again. And so I think that it is interesting that this is really becoming a major playing point for this administration, but I don't think it's anything more than a distraction and an effort to divert attention away from a lot of the factors and a lot of the decisions, a lot of the very negative press that this administration is receiving. But if it isn't that, there's something far more devious going on nationally. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video for you to watch, and then a playlist for my 2026 election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all later today.